Well, my friends, sometimes I see a video and it's thought-provoking and inspiring. A little less inspiring than this, even though this is considered what they call the East Village in Des Moines. It's one of the more, gauche or hip neighborhoods now. When I was younger, this was a pretty shady neighborhood. Anyhow, you can see Batman's on his second trip of a 4-trip job at this particular location. Just finished watching Rob's latest video on, confessions of a GM, a humble game master. And the topic, a big part of his topic was his take on Star Trek. Well, that got me thinking. I have quite a few games, as it's becoming clear with those of you who do watch my videos, and I have a lot of facet stuff. Star Trek, it's an interesting thing with Star Trek. The RPG itself has gone through probably as many or more revisions and alterations over the years as some of the more well-known RPGs, but not so many people really notice or realize and watch the evolution of a game, which is in and of itself not unique, and I'm not going to say it is, but the fans and the gamer fans of the Star Trek franchise continue to poke and prod and manipulate and adjust and update these game systems as we go. And what we have, the latest was Star Trek Adventures. Is that an RPG I've been hearing about? I have yet to see it. I know there's a new one out. I've seen a number of people talk about it over the past couple of years. The original FASA, very basic, built on the premise of an earlier tactical war game system called Starfleet Battles, produced by a different company. And a lot of the combat systems for ship combat are married over from the Starfleet Battles, which is one of the reasons they're so, when you want a ship-to-ship battle, was very good. Everything else was acceptable, maybe even considered mediocre by a lot of standards by today. And I think we have to keep that in mind too, to some degree, when we talk about old school Renaissance or OSR. We're looking at the older versions of games, or older games in particular, to understand just how much evolution of the fan base and the players and the game masters and the designers and writers and creators have accomplished in the last 40 years. These games started out as something completely different from where they've ended up, and they're continuing to progress with utter fails and utter successes along the way. Trying to avoid throwing D&D around as it's very often done, but that's a good example. One set was put out that most people didn't like, the next set, etc., etc., good stuff, bad stuff. It's the same thing. Now with Star Trek, one of the challenges for the game people, the game designers, the writers, the people that play the game, is keeping up with the changes in the franchise. Each new TV series and sets of movies brought along major changes in everything. Not the base foundations of the game or the world, the Trek universe, but the many, many smaller nuances. Throughout second generation, especially with Deep Space Nine, and I think Deep Space Nine is probably the biggest contributor to the Klingon portion of the game, plus the movies where we see the Federation dealing with the Klingons and so on and so forth more and more in the front. And we have loads of new and updated material. So when I look at my FASA collection, as they went along, as the games went along, as the franchise changed, so did FASA's game. It became better. It became broader. They added more material. They updated the older material fairly frequently. Every time a new movie came out, there was a source book for it that tried to adjust and account for any significant or interesting alterations or additions to the canon. And then in addition to that, we have tons and tons of what's considered beta canon or non-official material out there that run the gamut from fan-based comics and source books and detailed blueprints and novels, hundreds of novels, lots of material to work with. And to find any game system that can keep up with that is a big challenge. So we look at a lot of, when I listen to what Rob said and some of the stuff I've said recently, and we've had some conversations with other people about the subject, I look at the stuff from back in the 80s and how limited seeming it was. And it was limited in many ways. The challenge, especially for younger players, myself being a younger player at the time, was trying to reconcile the style with my more brash, gung-ho, kill everything, murder hobo mindset that's common with D&D. And in some aspects, for science fiction, Star Wars was more in line with D&D when, you know, if the bounty hunter's bugging you at the bar, you just shoot him, a la Han Solo. Or did Han shoot second? We'll never know 100%. That's always the great mystery. So, just saying. I don't know. I would always be interested in somebody else's opinion on this subject. Now, of course, I'm interested in everybody's opinion, but I rarely get any responses, which is fine, because I'm a bombastic, loudmouth, opinionated SOB who has more than enough responses and or opinions and commentary to come. So, don't comment, tag it, don't tag it, love it, hate it, throw it in the trash. I don't really care. It's not about you. It's about me. And guys like Rob and people who really appreciate this topic of discussion. Sometimes it comes and goes, yeah? But how many game systems parallel a TV movie franchise do you know? I mean, honestly, okay, the RPG for Star Wars came out long after the movies did. They didn't try to produce them. Well, I guess that's not true. It came out a few years. The first RPG West End games came out in the 80s. But the same principle. Other than Star Wars and Star Trek, there isn't too many RPGs that really run the test of time when it comes to their franchises, because their franchises have it. Okay, there's a Game of Thrones version of the RPG, but Game of Thrones is going to wrap up. There ain't going to, where's it going to go from there? Lord of the Rings is come and gone and still trying to struggle to keep up a little bit, but they don't have regular TV series to feed the bulldog. That's a big part of it. Star Trek does and did. Lots of reruns still available. Star Wars also didn't have a TV series, but Star Wars has a very different kind of fan base in some aspects. Very devoted to the culture behind the mass, so to speak, in my opinion. So there you have it, from a 30-odd degree day. The sun's shining, which is a blessing since they thought it was going to be snowing. You all have a good Thanksgiving. And as always, I'd like to hear what you got to say.